Welcome back to Small Ball with Kenny Beecham. We are here after our month-long hiatus. And boy, I cannot be more excited for today's episode. About a week ago, I hit Greg up and I said, it's time, baby. It's time to get back in the studio. It's time to talk some NBA. I had been missing this, so I'm happy to be back. If you are unaware of why we left, there's a few different reasons, right? The NBA season was over, Summer League was over, the draft was over, the offseason was officially starting. And I always want to take some time after a season to reflect. And I also recognize that I had another show to host. How can I put together 3 NBA shows a week when there's nothing going on in NBA? At least the other show, numbers on the board, there's 4 different minds working it. And let's be honest, if you watched those episodes recently, it's like 10% NBA. It's just friends hanging out. I don't got that luxury here. It's usually a one-man show. So took that step back to kind of reflect on the season and figure out how we can get better for the upcoming season. But also, when we took a step back, my wife was 8 months pregnant. And yeah, we have a new baby girl, man. Shout out to Amaya Jade Beecham. I'm putting together a nice little team of, I don't know yet. We don't know. I mean, my oldest, she loves basketball, but she also loves Pokemon and she loves theater. We'll figure out which route she goes down. Will she be the best trainer? Would she be in the WNBA doing what Paige Beckers just did a couple days ago? Or would she be on Broadway? It's one of the 3. And then obviously the youngest is too young to do anything other than spit up on my nice shirt. So shout out to my kids, man. It's been, great because there's nothing more important to me in life than being a great dad and being a great husband to my wife that went through 11 hours of labor without an epidural, without any medication, just thugging it out. There's very few times in my life where I've been afraid. That was one of them times, man. But she powered through. She's healthy, baby's healthy, and that's all that really matters. When I texted Greg, I wanted to get back on the horse and do some more NBA-related stuff, I had this idea in mind. And it was about giving every single NBA team an opportunity to redo one transaction from the last 10 years. Because one bad draft pick, one bad trade, one bad signing, one bad contract can change the trajectory of a bunch of different franchises. And even if you are a team that won a championship recently, you have to look at it and say, man, we missed here. We wish we did this differently. So I've been working on this run of shows since I texted Greg a few days ago, about a week or so ago. And I think I got, from my perspective, 30 transactions for 30 teams that they would want back. One thing that is extremely important as we listen to this episode and recognize this is the offseason of the 2025 season, we are not doing the goddamn butterfly effect thing. Oh, Kenny, if they don't do this transaction, then they don't have the 7th pick in the next draft and they don't get this guy. We're not doing that. We're just looking at the transaction for what it is, okay? And then after I had completed at least a rough draft of the 30 transactions or whatever, I went onto Twitter and asked y'all, verbatim, I said, if your favorite team, and it's 2025. I'm almost 30 years old. I used the wrong your. God damn it. I pride myself on knowing the yours, and yours. But this time around, I don't know what the hell was going on. It must have been half awake from being with a screaming baby overnight. But I said, if your favorite team have had one transaction redo in the last 10 years, what would you want them to do? And this is actually an insane repost from a bunch of different people. It started off in the NBA community, then it ended up in the NFL community. Then I saw the name Chris Bryant of the Colorado Rockies. I saw, it's a bunch of different baseball contracts that people wish they didn't give out. I even saw Juan Soto's name pop up. I'm like, oh shit, are Mets fans over Juan Soto? I have no idea. I haven't been keeping up. Then it got to the football community, and there was a bunch of names I had no idea. Then the NHL community got a hang of it. So it was actually really cool to eventually read through the replies and the quote tweets and be like, man, I have no idea who this guy is, but apparently his fan base ain't rocking with him because this retweet got 200 likes on it. They really wish this man wasn't on their team. So I thought it was really cool because, again, I'm a outsider to 29 different fan bases. I pride myself on trying to stay in tune with the other 29 fan bases or try to cover the sport as great as I can. But there's also a level of things I won't be able to recognize since I'm not a diehard fan. So I'm going to give my own personal ones. If you disagree, please let me know in the comment section because this is a fluid conversation. Hit me up on Twitter, reply to that original tweet from a few days ago, whatever you need to do. Before we get into the first one, I want to remind you to leave a like and subscribe. I want to tell you right now that though we are back today, it does not mean that we're going back weekly during the off season, but I'm going to try my very best to give y'all an episode at least every other week. And hopefully it's something similar to this, was more researchy. I noticed that in the 2024-2025 season, we did a lot of vibes talk, which ain't nothing wrong with vibes talk, ladies and gentlemen. But I like doing the research of this was really fun. It took me back to like earlier in my coverage days. Anyway, starting off with the obvious. The Dallas Mavericks, if they could redo one transaction, it's going to be the Luka Doncic trade. It was so interesting because that was immediately what sparked this whole thing, right? Obviously, the Luka Doncic trade leads to the Cooper Flag thing, but yeah, we're not doing butterfly effect. And then as I'm going through my replies of that tweet that I just read to you, Jason Gallagher, who's one of the biggest, I don't even know if he reps Mavs fandom anymore, but at one point, one of the biggest Mavs fans, and obviously I don't want to turn him into just that because he's a producer on so many different projects and he just overall a good follow. He quote tweeted and saying the Mavs might be the only fan base with a consensus here. And I was thinking like, yeah, obviously not a single Mavs fan is like, yeah, I'd rather not draft Dennis Smith Jr. versus trading away Luka Doncic. And I was like, is there other teams that would have a consensus? And the closest thing I got was the Lakers. Like, yeah, when I read through the replies, some people are like, man, I wish we didn't give Alex Caruso away to the Bulls for nothing or let him walk for nothing. There were some people that were like, I wish we didn't trade Mike Muscala for Zubac 1-for-1, which is obviously a ridiculous trade. But the Russell Westbrook trade is the answer for the Los Angeles Lakers. I want to put y'all back to the mindset of what the hell was going on when this trade happened. In 2020, you know that the Lakers go on to win a championship. And that offseason, I remember, and I went back to do the research, that Rob Pelinka got high praises for what he did in the offseason coming off the NBA championship. They re-signed Bron to a max contract. They re-signed Anthony Davis to a max contract. They trade for Dennis Schroeder without giving up many assets. They bring in Montrezl Harrell from the Clippers, who were just the sixth man of the year not too long before that. They bring in Wes Matthews, who at this point we didn't know he was washed. And they brought in Marc Gasol, who at this point we didn't know he was washed. Overall, that was a really good offseason for a team that had just come off the championship. It was so good of an offseason that going into the next year, they were the heavy favorite to go back-to-back. The Lakers, they were cooking. They were doing so well that at the start of the season, they started the year off 21-6 through the first 27 games. This was the team that was going to or break the streak of I think at this point, there was 3 straight years of new champions. They were like, no, we about to do this. It's going to be our Lakers. And then around Valentine's Day, Anthony Davis gets injured. Then a little bit after that, Solomon Hill falls on LeBron and he injures him. So they have a 17-game stretch where there's no Bron and there's no AD. And in that stretch, they go 7-10, and they go from a team that was sitting at the 2 seed that fall all the way down to the 7th seed. Then eventually they go into the postseason and they lose in the first round to the Phoenix Suns. Now, from Rob Pelinka's perspective, even though this was not the season that we could have wanted, there was some real question marks about LeBron James, who at that point was 37 years old. Is this injury from Solomon Hill, is this going to be the new norm for this guy that has been basically Superman in his career? Or will we see this man get injured again? Anthony Davis had put together 2 really solid seasons for the Lakers, but they weren't necessarily healthy seasons. And he was starting to get this rap as what do they call them? Street clothes from Charles Barkley or Data Davis is what you saw a lot during this time. And for Rob Pelinka's perspective, Russell Westbrook can help some of that. Like everybody recognized that the fit wasn't going to be 1-to-1, right? You think about what Bron needs as an NBA player to be successful, what Anthony Davis has thrived in as a system. Russell Westbrook didn't really provide a lot of the stuff that they needed. But what he provided was, at least in that time, what we thought is that he was so much of a floor raiser that the trade kind of made sense. Now, I went back to read all the articles from when the trade happened. It was a mixed bag. You had people like CBS or Bleach Report that gave the trade a C from their perspective. And then you also have people that sat on the Through the Wire podcast that said, hey, the Lakers were offseason winners again because they traded for Russell Westbrook. And in my mind, when I said that, I was talking about myself. When I said that, that's what I was thinking. That if LeBron goes down with an injury or AD goes down with an injury, we just watched Russell Westbrook take a Wizards team who didn't have a ton of talent and in a defeated Eastern Conference make the postseason. That's at the bare minimum, Russell Westbrook gonna play, and he's gonna play hard, and that's gonna equate to wins. Obviously, that didn't work out that way, and it ultimately shut the window that was the LeBron James-led Lakers championship. And it's kind of weird to think about it that way, but that's the reality. Now they got this new window that's opening because Luka Doncic is on the team. But back then, man, that looked like a team that was going to be in the conference finals multiple years and being another champion. And it hasn't really been that. I mean, they traded some pretty valuable players. And I know Kuzma's the butt of a lot of jokes nowadays, but like at that point, Kyle Kuzma was a really good role player. KCP was a really good role player. I remember the Photoshop of KCP looking at the Finals MVP from 2020, like, Brian, you better watch out. So that's the one. Even though the Zubats for Mike Muscala trade is kind of it was nuts in the moment, but we didn't think that Zubac was going to be like an all-NBA player one day. And here he is, basically an all-NBA player. The next one, and I do want to say we're going to spend different amount of time for a different amount of these. Obviously, every single one. I'm not going to give a 4-minute breakdown to why this trade sucked, but here we go. The Chicago Bulls was actually really tough for me. And I think that's because I'm here and I'm grounded in what's going on. Here are my 3 candidates. Missing in the 2020 draft. Missing in the 2020 draft legitimately set us back like 5 different seasons. Because I believe that if they would have hit on that draft and it wasn't Patrick Williams, but instead it was Tyrese Halliburton who was, projected to go in this range, it would make it that, like, yeah, Tyrese Halliburton, DeMar DeRozan, Vucevic, and Zach LaVine is not winning anything, but it will make it so much easier to hit the reset if we have Tyrese Halliburton as the core young piece. But instead, they held on to those guys that I mentioned because we didn't really have a lot of young prospects to really build around. I thought about the 2017 draft day trade, and we gave up Jimmy Butler in exchange for Zach LaVine, Chris Dunn, and Larry Markkinen because we haven't done shit since then. And I remember in time, it was like, I kind of understand it, but Jimmy Butler was only 27 years old. And the front office didn't believe that he was good enough to build around. And as we've seen, the man has made it to 2 different NBA finals since then. So we should have probably built around him. And we had cap space that season because the Rondo contract was gone and we had got rid of Dwayne Wade. We could have taken a year to retool and then use some free agency to build a team around Jimmy Butler, but we went the opposite direction in the rebuild. And now we're in a different rebuild after that rebuild. And the last candidate is just straight up the Vooch trade. Wendell Carter, the pick that turned into Franz Wagner and the pick that turned into Jet Howard for Vooch. And now we can't get rid of Vooch. He had one of his best seasons as a pro, and no team is like, we want to trade for him, even if it is for a bag of bones. That's something. But if I had to pick between the 3 right now, it's probably the 2020 draft because there was like a legit superstar right there who wanted to play for the Bulls. Yeah, his name gonna come up. Tyrese Halliburton's gonna come up a few different times in today's episode. Next, we move to the Denver Nuggets. Again, forgetting about the butterfly effect. You remember when they drafted Donovan Mitchell and traded him away for Trey Lyles? And it wasn't one of them things that's like, oh, well, if you get Donovan Mitchell, that means you don't get Jamal Murray. Nope, Jamal Murray's already on the roster. If you keep Donovan Mitchell, oh, you don't have the draft pick that turns to Jokic. Jokic is already on the roster. He's only like 21 years old, but he's already on the roster. So there's a world where they have the core of Donovan Mitchell, Jamal Murray, and Jokic. And obviously, it's not the perfect fit, right, with Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray in the backcourt, but these are like good problems to have. But they trade away for Trey Lyles. Damn. Draft day trades can really screw you up, man. Can really screw you up. Changes like the opportunity to get Aaron Gordon or whatever, but like I think you probably have a championship or 2 still if it's Donovan Mitchell in there. And it made me rethink, like, what the hell was in Donovan Mitchell's scouting report that made him drop so low? Because he just had one of the greatest, like, I don't know, rookie seasons for somebody that wasn't automatically an all-star. Where this team was a playoff team the year before and they traded away a bunch of stuff. They were going to hit the reset button, but Donovan Mitchell's like, no, I got us and I'm going to lead us to the postseason and I'm going to like win in the postseason. It's kind of crazy for a rookie that was, the 13th overall pick. And it's not even like he was a top 5 pick or anything. Donovan Mitchell's one of those guys, man. Next one, the Golden State Warriors. Now, this one, there's a bunch of different things that could happen. Because the Warriors one is the one that I finished with. Is a unique one because you can go the Chris Paul for Jordan Poole trade, but obviously there was other circumstances that led to that. I don't think they do that trade if what's his name keep his hands to himself, right? But if I had to pick something, it's not necessarily a redo, but it's a missed opportunity. I feel like it's rare in the NBA where we know about a trade that was offered but not accepted. But something that happened with the 2020 draft is this is the draft where James Wiseman selected 2nd overall, is that Brian Windhorst had reported that the Wolves, the Timberwolves, who had the first pick in that year's draft that turned into Anthony Edwards, had offered pick number 1 for pick number 2 and for them to reacquire the 2021 draft pick, what turned into Jonathan Kuminga. right? If you remember, they traded away D'Angelo Russell to the Timberwolves, and the Timberwolves gave them a future pick. The Wolves just wanted to move down one spot and also get their own pick back. And the Warriors like, no, we like James Wiseman. So if we're redoing something, it's accepting that. Just accept the trade. You talk about bridging the gap. You're talking about the two timeline. Instead of it being Jonathan Kuminga and Moody and Wiseman, and now it's Anthony Edwards and Jordan Poole, and because I guess Moses Moody's still there, it's Anthony Edwards. Like, that is one of the biggest recent what ifs. Accept that trade. Or accept the other trade that was for Bradley Beal at the time, or the Pascal Siakam trade at the time. There was a few different ones that the Warriors could have had, and bridging that gap would have been amazing. You let me, Greg, let me know in the chat. Is that the one you would have selected? Because there's a couple different ones that, like, the Warriors window, for the most part, they've done a pretty solid job of keeping it somewhat open for a championship. When you think about the gap between their last championship with KD and then the championship with Wiggins and company, now they try to, do the Jimmy Butler thing, and I just don't think that has a ceiling for a championship. But like, in there's still a world, And Greg behind the scenes says, accept the Siakam for Kuminga trade. So yeah, it's something like that. It's definitely something like that. All right. Atlanta Hawks. I had this one written out, and I was curious of the Hawks fans that replied to my tweet, what were they really going to say? And not a single person from Hawks fandom that replied to my tweet mentioned the 2018 draft day trade, which makes sense. Trae Young's great. He's one of the stars of the city. But you don't redo that trade if you could go back where you had Luka Doncic on the roster with the pick number 3 instead of trading him away for pick number what? Was Trae Young pick 5, pick 6, and the pick that turned into Cam Reddish? We love some Trae Young. But Luka has a ceiling to be a top 10 player at the minimum. At the minimum, top 10 player for the next decade. And realistically, probably top 5 player for the next decade. And Trae Young doesn't really have that level of upside, right? Even if we really are rooted for Trae Young and excited to see the Atlanta Hawks this season. So I think it got to be that one for the Atlanta Hawks. The Toronto Raptors was a tough decision. There's a couple different trades that, like, again, in preparation for all this, I'm basically looking through every transaction for the last 10 years. And I'm filtering through Raptors, and I'm like, that trade kind of interesting. Oh, that trade not so great. The Pascal Siakam deal didn't net them much, at least not yet. The OG Anunoby deal got them 2 really solid role players, but, like, is there a ceiling higher for Emmanuel Quickley or RJ Barrett? But the one that I decided on, or the two that I was really trying to figure out, was the Jakob Poeltl trade and the Thaddeus Young trade. And I didn't even remember the Thaddeus Young trade until doing my research. I remember the Jakob Poeltl one, but let me explain them to you. The Raptors acquired Jakob Poeltl for Kim Birch, 2 first-round picks. And one of the first-round picks ended up being pick number 8 for the 2024 draft class. It ends up being Rob Dillingham. You're like, Kenny, if we the Raptors, we probably don't want Rob Dillingham. You are probably right. But it's not about having Rob Dillingham himself. It's about having the asset that was the 8th overall pick, because Rob Dillingham was drafted by the Spurs, but also traded to the Wolves for a 2030 first-round pick and a 2031 first-round pick. So in theory, if you keep your own pick and it falls the way it falls at pick number 8, you could still accept this trade when now you have a Wolves pick for 2030 and 2031. Maybe you think that the Wolves are going to be a great team for all the next decade, which is definitely possible because they have Anthony Edwards on the roster, but it's the asset. The Thaddeus Young trade was like trading a first-round pick for Thaddeus Young. That pick ended up being Malachi Branham, if I'm not mistaken. Or you can go pick number 29. That ended up being Malachi Flynn, with pick number 30 was Desmond Bane. Out of all of them, it's probably the Jakob Poeltl one. And that's not a shot at Jakob Poeltl because he's a very fine NBA player. But I've always been a guy that steers closer to not trading future draft capital, especially if it's not like a lottery protected for a guy that's not going to necessarily change the franchise. And Poeltl's really good, but he's not a franchise-changing guy. The Celtics one, while we are on the topic of Desmond Bane being drafted 30, he was drafted 30 to the Boston Celtics, and then he was traded to Memphis for, hell if I remember. I literally don't remember, but I do remember him being a part of the Celtics and him thinking that he was going to the Celtics. He said, oh, no, never mind, I'm going to Memphis. That just lets you know that the Celtics have done relatively good things over the last decade or so, that like their worst thing is that they had a draft day trade for somebody that's not an all-star yet. I mean, maybe he ends up being one day, but not yet. The Milwaukee Bucks. I think the Lillard trade has an opportunity to eventually end up on this list. Now, it is a swing that you take. I think even knowing the results, it's a swing that you take 100% of the time. Giannis and Dame should have been way better than what it turned out to be. Whether it be injuries, whether it be coaching, whether it be whatever, it should have been a lot better than what it turned out to be. But going away from that, because we still don't know exactly what's going to happen from it, but like, it's not necessarily about Damian's tenure there, but it's about the assets you gave up and then the assets you acquired when you got rid of him, which is 22 and some change $1 million in cap hold for somebody that literally can't play for the roster. But the one I ultimately went with was when they traded Dante DiVincenzo for Serge Ibaka. I remember where I was when this trade happened. I was in San Francisco shooting something with Mobile One, and I'm checking into my hotel, and I get the notification from, I'm assuming it was from Woj. And I remember thinking, like, what the hell is going on? Not that Dante DiVincenzo at this point is some all-star or anything close to it, but Serge Ibaka at that point was so old, and sorry to say this about you, Serge, but so washed at that time. For them to trade a young and intriguing player was interesting. Now, does Dante turn into the player that he is today without that Warrior stint when he's with Steph Curry? Probably not. But I just think about it like, man, that was a young player for a super old player who didn't even play on the roster for that long and didn't matter. You know, like it didn't matter that Serge was on the Bucks when they got to the postseason. So that's one of them. The Orlando Magic. In 2016, the Magic traded Ersan Ilyasova, Victor Oladipo, and Domantas Sabonis to OKC for guess who? The guy we just mentioned, Serge Ibaka. Serge Ibaka had come off a season where he was really solid. One of his career years as far as scoring goes, you know, he was getting developing more than just a shot blocking guy. But this was so insane because Serge Ibaka didn't even last half of a season with this team before he was traded for Terrence Ross in a pick. And that pick that they got back was for a guy that never suited up for the roster. So they traded away Vio, who we know goes on to win a most improved player. And unfortunately, his career ends up going shorter than what we expected. And Domantas Sabonis, who turns into an All-NBA player one day as well, for 3 months of Serge Ibaka as a hooper. And this is also the team that had Vucevic on it already. And they paid Bismack Biyombo a shit ton of money. So we have Bismack, Vooch, and Ibaka. It's so bad that Aaron Gordon is running the 3. He is never projected as a 3, at least in my mind. And that's one of the reasons why they had to trade Serge away, because there wasn't enough roster spots at one time for all 3 of their big acquisitions to play. It made no sense then, and it makes even less sense now. That's insane. The Kings one is very easy. Draft Luka Doncic, dog. He's sitting right there. One of the greatest international prospects ever. And then because he fell to 3, people have now opened their eyes a lot more to the international upside. Well, Luka was one of the most well-decorated players to ever, at that age ever, maybe number 1. And NBA scouts is like, shit, that big dude at Arizona, he got strong shoulders like David Robinson. Let's draft him. This left-handed power forward center mode, he looks promising in college. Let's draft him over the dude that just won a Euro MVP in a league full of 28-year-olds. He's 18. Just draft Luka Doncic. The 76ers there are a goddamn 76er fandom. For y'all to have so many seasons in the last decade of being like a good, competent team, and for me to look at your transactions and be like, damn, that was a miss. Damn, that was a miss. Damn, that was a miss. I pray that the Joel Embiid contract does not end up in these same conversations 3 years down the line. Same thing with the Paul George one. I hope that they both stay healthy and they have some good years together. But the 2 I was picking between is the Tobias Harris over me, the Jimmy Butler thing, or never trading up to get Markelle Fultz. You know, just don't trade up for getting Markelle Fultz, because now we're looking at it being Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, and Jason Tatum. Now, a lot of these ones, I don't want to like say, oh, you missed this pick and you should have drafted this guy, and that guy was projected to go 8 draft spots earlier. Like in the 2013 draft class, I know that was more than a decade ago, but I saw some Cavs fans like, yeah, man, we should have just drafted Jokic 1. Like that was never a fucking conversation. So I can't even say that. I mean, obviously you missed on Anthony Bennett, don't get me wrong, but like missing on Anthony Bennett should have been more like we should have taken Victor Oladipo. Maybe even Nerlens Noel, who was projected to go 1 there, even though he didn't have a long, successful career. But for this one, I went back to see every single mock draft, CBS, Bleacher Report, the ringer of this draft, and everybody had Jason Tatum going 3. I had never seen him go over 3 or below 3. So in my mind, if you don't trade up for Markelle Fultz and you have the same scouting report as every other GM across basketball, then Jason Tatum is on the team. And honestly, that changes so many things. And whether it was an accident for Markelle Fultz or mismanagement from the 76ers that got him to where he was, Tatum just changes everything about that franchise. The Suns. I've been trying to narrow it down to one singular transaction, but the entirety of the 2023 offseason is nuts. Or you could just draft Luka Doncic because Igor Kokoshkov is your coach right there, and he's also the head coach of the Slovenian national team. He's telling the front office Luka Doncic is him, and they like, nah, this big fella is the guy. But I mean, that's probably the right answer. But I also didn't want to say Luka Doncic for every single team or Tyrese Halliburton for every single team, even though I did it a few more times. Either way, you traded for Bradley Beal, and that's something. You traded away DeAndre Ayton and Tumani Kamara, something that people don't think about often, for Yusuf Nurkic. So the players out from the previous year was Ayton, Bizzy Biyombo, Torrey Craig, Jacques Landale, Chris Paul, Cam Payne, Landry Shamet. 7, like, some of those guys I'm giving a little bit too much credit, but like those are NBA players at the end of the day. And what they got in return was Grayson Allen, Bradley Beal, Eric Gordon, and Yusuf Nurkic. It was a horrendous offseason because I didn't even talk about the draft picks they gave up in these said trades. Like, it's bad. It's bad. But if it has to boil down to one transaction, it's either the Bradley Beal trade, which shout out to the Wizards for being able to get off that money, or just draft fucking Luka Doncic, dog. Miami Heat. It's got to be the Terry Rozier trade. The last season, Terry Rozier played with the Charlotte Hornets. He was averaging 23 points per game on 46, 36, 84 splits. And then he got to Miami and completely stunk it up. He had me convinced, too. He got to the press conference after he got traded and said, hey, when I came into the league, I was known as a defensive player, and I'm going to be a defensive player again. And offense wasn't it either. And I think the biggest regret is not necessarily about Terry Rozier stinking it up and having a big contract on the books, but it's more about them putting in that 2027 draft pick because they put together the 2027 draft pick, be the stipend rule, they couldn't move a 2026 or a 2028. So even if the Miami Heat wanted to be ultra aggressive, which by rumors, it seemed like they always are trying to be ultra aggressive, it makes it so much more difficult because you have picks that you cannot move. And I think that pick is top 14 or is some type of protection. And then in 2028, it becomes completely unprotected if it does convey in 2027. So it's a bad trade all around, a bad trade all around. Or you can say, pay Dwayne Wade, damn it. I hate when these front offices disrespect their legends. And I know he got an ugly statue now and his jersey going to be retired. Yeah, I don't give a damn about that. The fact that I had to buy a Dwayne Wade Chicago Bulls jersey is ridiculous. But Pat Riley wanted to put his nuts on the table and act like he was it's Dwayne Wade. Just pay him. Pay your legends, bro. There are certain players that should always be one-team guys. Dwayne Wade came to Chicago, and it was cool because I was I think I was 18 years old when Dwayne Wade played here, and he's one of my 5 favorite players of all time. He's from Robbins, baby. He's from home. But he should never have suited up for my team, ever. The 3 Alphas team. Y'all remember that? You probably remember that. He played for the Cavs. What number did he wore? Hold on. All right. Dwayne Wade Cavs. Did he wear like number 9? What the? Pat Riley, I blame you, man, that I have ever seen Dwayne Wade wear the number 9. I'm actually out of here. I'm going to close this tab, man. Ain't no way you about pay Dwayne Wade, damn it. The Pistons. Here's another Halliburton one, but I have to say it. They drafted Killian Hayes over Tyrese Halliburton. And this one is different because Halliburton did an interview with Taylor Rooks. This was like maybe 2 years to his career. And he said that of every team that passed on him, this is the one that felt the most personal because he recognized that the Pistons desperately needed a point guard and there was no point guard in the class in his mind that was better than him. And he turned out to be right. And obviously Killian Hayes has jumped around a little bit, got cut from his national team, which is insane to think about. But the French team is obviously, they're doing great stuff in France right now. So passing on Halliburton is one. Or why did you pay Monty Williams, who didn't want to coach your team? That set your franchise back years. Luckily, JB comes in and boom, they're a playoff team and everything. But like, there's an entire year with a wasted development year with Detroit Pistons basketball because Monty Williams is there. Pelicans. This is a tougher one. And this is the only this season transaction. That pick that they gave to Atlanta, I genuinely think that's like, of all of the picks that are not owned by their own team, that's the most valuable pick on the market. That's the most valuable moved pick in a while. And it's completely unprotected. It's completely unprotected. The Wizards had a lottery pick in 2022. And if you look at the 2022 lottery, it's some hits there. You know, like everybody, again, with 2022 is not that long ago, everybody from the 2022 lottery is still currently in the league, except for Johnny Davis. Johnny Davis is out of the league, y'all. Like, he's gone. He got traded to Memphis and got waived from Memphis. Didn't even want to take a flyer on, bro. So that's the miss. That's the one. And, you know, I went back to look at all the mocks, and Johnny Davis was projected around here. It's not like they super reached or anything like that, like the next team we're going to talk about who did super reach. They didn't super reach for Johnny Davis. He just wasn't very good at basketball. He just couldn't hold his own. And somebody put together a low-light mix of Johnny Davis this offseason. I don't want to beat up a man while he's down. But it's maybe one of the worst low-light mixes I've ever seen in my lifetime. And he was in the league for 2.5 years. Like, it's disgusting. So, missing on Johnny Davis has got to be top of that list. The next team, I talk about reaching. The Spurs drafted Josh Primo at pick 12. CBS mock draft, right? Like hours before the draft. This is not like something that happened a month before, then Josh Primo climbed up the ranks. An hour before the NBA draft happened, CBS Sport put together their absolute final mock draft. They had him as pick number 28. Sam Vecini, a well-respected draft guy, had Josh Primo at pick 36. The highest amongst any mock draft, all the major mock drafts I saw from this year, had Josh Primo as pick 26. That's the highest. And they drafted him at 12. At 12. Obviously, out of the league. He was supposed to be on the Bulls Summer League roster this year, and he got cut from the Summer League roster. Summer League roster. That's bad. That's bad. The Utah Jazz. Those jerseys got to be number one on the list. It's got to be. The highlighter numbers and letters and the stationary font. No creativity in them jerseys at all. I don't care about transactions when it comes to trades, to signings, to draft picks. It's 100% those damn jerseys. The only thing that came to mind other than the jerseys is when they gave Derek Favors 3 years, $27 million, and then had to trade a first-round pick to get rid of him like 6 months later. But the jerseys are way worse than that. Derek Favors also was out of the league right after that. But, like, it's the jerseys, dog. Genuinely the worst jerseys to maybe ever exist in the NBA. Next team we got is the Blazers. And there's a couple different ones that come to mind, but the one that I went with was the 2016 draft, the 2016 cap spike. They used all of the money that they had to go get Evan Turner on a 4-year, $75 million contract. Now, I don't want to act like they had an opportunity to go get Kevin Durant. Like, we're talking about Portland, who's never been a huge free agent destination. But you think about Damian Lillard's window and what it could be, and eventually they went on to, make a conference finals appearance. That salary cap boost could have netted them something more than Evan Turner on $75 million. People were mentioning the Jeremy Grant contract. I'm not mad at that, but also it hasn't had, I don't know, it hasn't cost them too much as they were in the midst of a rebuild, If it becomes a contract that's untradeable in the next year or two, then absolutely. And maybe it is that already. It probably is that already. But it's not like they're competing. It's not like we have this hole on the salary books and we're one piece away. That's not who they are. So the Jeremy Grant one is crazy, but it's not that bad. While we're on the subject of the 2016 salary cap boost, Chandler Parsons, 4 years, $94 million to the Grizzlies. And the man played 95 games for the team. A total of 95 games in the 4-year contract. Insane. Obviously, he had some off-the-court stuff where it's an accident and so on, but they paid that man handsomely, almost $100 million contract, and he shot like 30-something% from three in that tenure. It was bad. Going to our defending champion. Like I said, even if you were an NBA champion, there's got to be something that you wish you can have back. And this is a very minuscule one, but that lets you know that Sam Presti has been on his stuff recently. The one I saw a lot from the community under that tweet was like the Gordon Hayward trade for Man. But without that trade, you don't have the money to go get Isaiah Hartenstein. So, like, that's a domino thing. What I got is that they traded 2 first-round picks to trade up to get Ousmane Dieng. And because of that, it's so funny to see how it goes, because obviously in this draft class, they end up with Ousmane Dieng, but they also end up with Jalen Williams, where like they valued Ousmane Dieng more than Jalen Williams because they drafted him before. Now we're talking about 1 pick, but still they traded up to get Ousmane Dieng, who wasn't a part of the championship run, really, like as far as real minutes played, while J-Dub is a goddamn all-NBA player, all-defensive player already. So, like, it's crazy how things could have shifted. But Ousmane Dieng was higher on their draft board. That's nuts. The Knicks drafted Kevin Knox at pick 9, which sucks. But also sucks more when you think about pick number 10 was Mikal Bridges and pick number 11 was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I don't know what their personal big board look like, but damn, those 2 guys after them sucks that you missed on that. But, Mikal Bridges he's there now. He's there. You ain't got to worry about it. It just cost you a bunch of picks to make it happen. The Minnesota Timberwolves traded away Jimmy Butler to Philadelphia for Jared Bayless, Robert Covington, and Dario Saric. Hello? I'm going to say that again. They traded away Jimmy Butler, who was an all-star, by the way. It's not like it was like, oh, he was an all-star. Now, I understand y'all need me shit, but like, that's the value. Even if you had no leverage, that's the value. Jared Bayless, who was out of the league after the season, Robert Covington, who played half a season, and then Dario Saric, who you traded away to draft who? Jarrett Culver, which is also an ultimate bad pick. He was also out of the league in 3 years, just like some of the other guys you mentioned. So it's either the Jimmy Butler trade or the Jarrett Culver acquisition. But Jarrett Culver at Texas Tech was that one run. He was pretty good. Next, the Clippers. You know the trade. Paul George and, Shea and all these picks for PG. The pick ended up being Dub. The pick ended up being, I forget, is Josh Giddey a part of this? Is that a Josh Giddey pick? I don't remember. Let me double check that real quick. But I know for sure J-Dub himself is acquired in this trade. Oh, no, not Josh Giddey. Then who is it? It's another guy in their core that was a part of this. Either way, that trade, again, you understand it in real time. Kawhi is coming off a championship. Paul George is coming off an MVP finalist year. You do that trade. I'm not even mad at it. But now with revisionist history, we know that Shea is one of the best players in the league and the MVP of the league. And then J-Dub just made, again, an all-defensive team, and he also made an all-NBA team. Also, Trey Mann was a part of this trade via draft. Jaime Jaquez, Nick Clifford. And then, yeah, ultimately one of the craziest trades of all time. We're almost at the finish line. Team 26 is the Pacers. The Pacers and Kevin Pritchard and them, they've done some pretty good things there. It's very hard to find like one singular thing. But the one I went with was TJ Leaf, which is like the 19th pick in the draft or something like that. And it's like the likelihood of you hitting at that draft pick in the first place is pretty low. But TJ Leaf wasn't an NBA player. Was he pick 18? He wasn't an NBA player at all. And there were some people drafted after him that are genuinely NBA players, like not acting like they're going to change the franchise, but like John Collins is after here, Jared Allen, Ojan Nobi. There are some names right after him that would have helped this team. TJ Leaf played with Lonzo Ball, who's one of the greatest college ball players ever. He changed everybody's life in that locker room. TJ Leaf ended up being one of those dudes. Next, you got the Houston Rockets, who, since Stone has taken over, it's been mostly hits. Right? It's like, it's not a lot to go on. The one I banked on was Steven Silas being the head coach for 2.5 or 3 seasons. Sucked. I feel like they lost some progression amongst some of their young guys. I remember there was multiple games from that era where Bruno Fernando was closing out games over Alperen Sengun, even though everybody recognized that Alperen Sengun should be getting those minutes as a young, intriguing player. And also I was like, Jalen Green, but then again, Jalen Green helps you get Kevin Durant. But if you draft, I don't know, Evan Mobley there or something like that. It's got to be something like that. Evan Mobley, Scotty Barnes, Jalen Suggs, all these guys end up being just better and more equipped to compete in 2025 than Jalen Green. Next, the Cleveland Cavaliers. They traded Kyrie Irving for Isaiah Thomas, who ends up only playing 15 games for them because of his hip. He just can't move the way he did. And then IT gets traded to the Lakers after just 15 games. And, again, it's one of them situations where nobody had really leverage. Kyrie Irving / the Cavs didn't have a lot of leverage in it. And they thought that they were going to get a guy that just came off an all-star appearance. But the medicals were crazy, man. I wonder if that trade happens in 2025, do we see a Mark Williams situation where like that trade is agreed on? It's like, oh, snap. Do Isaiah Thomas is physical? That hip is awful. Let's rescind that trade and trade Kyrie Irving somewhere else. But they don't. And they let an all-star Kyrie Irving basically go to Boston for free because it was like IT and Jay Crowder. And then Colin Sexton, a draft pick that turned into Colin Sexton. So then Colin Sexton gets ultimately traded to Utah for Donovan Mitchell. But again, it's not the butterfly effect thing, but I'm just saying that transaction sucks. The Hornets, one of the things that has happened to the Hornets multiple times in their existence is a legendary player being drafted by the Hornets. You get draft day pictures with them in the Hornets hat, and they immediately ship him out to another team. Kobe traded for Vlade Divac, and Shea getting traded for Miles Bridges. Shea's first picture as an NBA player, he has a hat that says Charlotte Hornets on it. That's groundbreaking for the whole franchise if he just stays on the team and they don't do that trade. And the last thing we got, definitely not the least of things, is the Brooklyn Nets. I went with the James Harden trade. Again, this is not an indication of James Harden, phenomenal ball player. I think that Nets team of him, Kevin, and Kyrie is one of the biggest what-if teams ever. I think that team, if healthy, goes on and they win a championship pretty easily. Like, they were, I remember them playing against the Bulls when they were finally completely healthy, and we didn't stand a goddamn chance. It was like a prime-time game, and the Bulls never really stood a chance. But, like, I looked at that team like, this team is going to go on to win a championship easily. And obviously, injuries from KD, Kyrie has his own stuff. Kevin Durant's shoe is too big against the Bucks. There's a lot of different dominoes that go with that. But this trade ended up being for the Brooklyn Nets. They traded away Jared Allen, Karis LeVert, and 3 first-round picks. One of the first-round picks turns to Tari Eason. One of them turns into Reed Shepard, and one of them still has it conveyed. And also 4 swaps. It's like the whole treasure trove of draft picks in order to acquire James Harden. And at the time, nobody cared because James Harden is that good or was that good. But now looking back on it, because it didn't work out, you look at that trade and say, damn, we gave up a ton. And then also, when James Harden was on his way back out, you trade him to Philly for Ben Simmons, who people in that moment of time thought that the Nets got good value because Ben Simmons was, an all-NBA player, an all-defensive player. He's just going through a little back injury. He'll be all right. He went all right. So it's the Harden trade and the Harden trade out that if you could redo it, you probably redo it. And that's all 30 teams. Please let me know what was my hits, what was my misses as an outsider looking into your favorite franchise. This was such a fun experiment to do. And again, hopefully I could do more things like this. You let me know if there are some concepts that you like from it. Like, can we do the opposite? The best move in all 30s franchise? I don't know. It's the offseason, baby. We can do pretty much anything. But before we get out of here, AskKB, baby. We got to do AskKB. If you want to hit us up, go to or use the hashtag AskKB on Instagram, on Twitter. We'll find it and we'll pick some of our favorites. The first one comes from Cam, who says, if you could make any content with any NBA player, excluding a direct interview, what would it be? I've had ideas for a series that for a very long time. And I don't know if I should tell you exactly what that is because I don't know who'll be watching these videos. Is there an exec over there at the NBA or at some company watching these episodes and looking for ideas? I ain't telling you. But what I will say is my favorite show of all time when it comes to the basketball is Inside Stuff. And one thing I really liked about that was that we took players off of the court and into their interests. So I think it was Larry Johnson. I haven't seen this episode since I was like 7. I think it was Larry Johnson that was in love with reptiles. And they went into his house and he had 7 different tanks of different reptiles. Bearded dragons, big snakes, I think he had anaconda. He had like an iguana, just a bunch of different stuff. And that was something you would never know in 1992 that Larry Johnson just really does like anacondas and different reptiles. So I would want to take NBA players and put them into their own personal element. Miles Turner, we know likes Lego. Let's go. Let's fucking do some Lego together or something like that. I think we got an audio one, so let me get ready for that.
What retired role player do you think, if returned to the league, could make a team championship caliber? You're the GOAT, Kenny. Thank you. And the podcasts are tough.
Thank you. I'm so happy that my podcast is tough, man. I think that's number one on my priority list. So thank you for the question, and thank you for giving me that great compliment. The first thing that came to mind, I don't want to give you some recently retired players, but like a prime version of Danny Green is going to all contenders and playing closing minutes. He just is. I think a guy like Boris Diaw, he thrived with the great pass first Spurs team. He's even better nowadays, right? Because everybody's looking for forwards and bigs that can pass and make great decisions. Boris Diaw is one of those dudes. I'm sure he counts. I think he only got like a most improved player. I don't think he ever made an all-star game. We also got like some of them rim running, straight vertical lob threat centers. I don't want to use Tyson Chandler because Tyson Chandler made an All-NBA team, so I don't even think he counts as a role player. But a guy of that mold really does. And I'm not even talking like JaVale McGee. I think he's just got to be just slightly above that. I think those dudes are a premium even in today's game, especially if you have a really good point guard who, likes to play downhill and everything. I think that honestly, a lot of the role players that were good then would also be good now, because in order to be a good role player then, most of the time you had to be a really good defender or a decent enough defender, and you had to be able to make a decision, right? Like a lot of those dudes are not sitting in the corners like nowadays as role players, but you trusted them to make an extra pass. You trusted them to sometimes even create for themselves long ass mid-range jump shots. I was just watching the 2000 NBA Finals again because I recognize that like I can count on one hand how many total Reggie Miller games I've ever watched. And I was like, that's not cool. I got to figure out who Reggie Miller really was other than looking at his accolades. So I'm rewatching that. And, it's just the times where, people come off the bench and it's like, what's his name? Austin Crochet. I never know how to pronounce it. It's like they're running the offense through him, even though, Reggie is still on the court. And at this point in 2000, Reggie's already old. He's still good. He's always been a playoff riser, but we're running the offense through Austin. So, like, he had to have some type of fluidity in his offensive game. And also, the game I'm thinking about is game 2. And in game 1, he was like 7 of 7 from the field. So, like, he probably just had a big-ass boost from the coach's staff saying, hey, go cook, man. You just went 7 for 7. They got killed by Shaq if I had to ruin or spoil the 2000 NBA Finals. Shaq was a monster. Yeah. So shout out to everybody that gave a question for AskKB. This was super, super fun. I'm excited. I got some things lined up, and hopefully I can get some guests during the offseason. Y'all let me know, whether it be on Spotify's comments or the comments down below. If you watch the whole episode, thank you. Would y'all be mad if I did every couple weeks or so bring on a football creator just to talk some NFL? Maybe a Bears creator, just talk some Chicago Bears. Because I'm on cloud 9. I was last year too, when they disappointed me. But I'm on cloud 9 with my Bears. And I'm not if I had to like rank my 1 through 10, my knowledge when it comes to the NFL, I'm like a straight up 5, right? But if I bring somebody that's super knowledgeable, maybe by the end of the regular season of the NFL, I'm like a 7 or maybe an 8. And maybe small ball can be talking about when Tom Brady deflated the football. So that's a small ball. It don't have to be basketball or small ball. Could be a baseball. You feel me? Small ball, golf ball. I could do other sports, I think, if I could get somebody to do it with me. So thank y'all so much for watching this episode of Small Ball. Love y'all so much. Happy to be back, and I'll see y'all soon. Peace.